So, have you ever really stopped to think about what goes on behind the closed doors of a house that's, well, truly haunted? Today, we are opening a case file from the archives of probably the most famous paranormal investigators ever, Ed and Lorraine Warren. And let me tell you, this one, the story of the Donovan family haunting, is considered one of the most flat-out dangerous cases they ever took on. The entire case file kicks off with this quote, and honestly, it just sets the perfect, chilling tone for what's about to happen. It's a pretty stark reminder, right, that the most normal-looking places, the houses you walk by every day, can be hiding secrets that are just terrifying. All right, so let's get into it. Section 1, a dangerous game. You know, it's funny, in so many of these stories, the real horror doesn't start with some big, scary monster. It starts with something way more subtle. In this case, a seemingly harmless object and a very, very human feeling: loneliness. So let's meet the Donovans. On the surface, they're a totally typical family. You've got Ted and Ellen and their 19-year-old daughter, Patty. The thing is, they've just moved, and for Patty, it's been a really tough adjustment. She's feeling cut off, isolated, and it's that vulnerability, that feeling of being alone, that becomes the key that unlocks a door that absolutely should have stayed shut. And what does she do? In this desperate attempt to feel a connection, Patty brings home an Ouija board. I know, it's like the classic start to every horror movie, right? But here's the thing. A lot of people see it as just a game, but paranormal experts, they see it as a direct line, a kind of spiritual telephone. And Patty has absolutely no idea who or what is about to answer her call. So she sits down with the board, probably a little nervous, a little excited, and asks that simple question that has started so much trouble over the years. Is anyone there? And you can just imagine the shock, because it works. She gets a response. The planchette starts gliding across the board, and it spells out one single, unmistakable word: yes. Just like that, the connection is made. The line is open. So, feeling braver now, and with her guard totally down because she's just so lonely, Patty asks the question that's really on her mind. Will you be my friend? Okay, and this is where things get really sinister. See, the entity doesn't just say yes again. Oh no, it's much smarter than that. It slowly spells out Boyfriend. I mean, talk about a masterclass in manipulation. It immediately figured out what Patty wanted most in the world and started pretending to be the perfect companion, all to gain her trust. But this so-called boyfriend from the Ouija board, yeah, it wasn't what it seemed. And in Section 2, we find out how this seemingly friendly chat starts to show its true, terrifying colors in The Truth Behind the Walls. What started as a conversation just spirals into a total nightmare, and fast. I mean, look at this timeline. At first, it's just noises, loud knocking coming from inside the walls. Then it becomes a full-on assault on the senses, this disgusting smell of rotten flesh and sulfur. And then it gets visual. A thick red liquid that looks just like blood starts pouring out of the faucets. And it all leads up to one single horrifying night, March 31st, 1974. And this just gives you a little taste of the pure chaos of that night. Just try to picture this. A huge 100-kilo dresser just lifts off the floor and starts spinning in the air. Chairs, pictures, literally anything not nailed down is just floating around the room. A dark black shadow starts crawling over the walls, and a deep, guttural growl is echoing through the entire house. This wasn't a haunting anymore. This was a war. They had to get out. But here's the part that is just bone-chilling. They run away, they check into a hotel, thinking, okay, we're safe. But the activity starts up again. And that's when that horrible realization hits them. It's not the house. The entity isn't attached to a place. It's attached to them. There's nowhere to run. Totally terrified, with literally nowhere else to go, the Donovans made one last, desperate phone call. And that call is what brings us to Section 3. The Warrens' investigation. Now, as soon as Ed and Lorraine Warren arrived, their years of experience told them this was no ordinary ghost story. And this table here breaks down the huge difference. A typical haunting is usually a spirit, maybe a lost soul, that's attached to a place. But what the Donovans were dealing with was an infestation. That's a whole different level. We're talking about a non-human, demonic entity that attaches itself to a person with a single, evil goal: to cause as much pain as possible and eventually to possess them. So let's be super clear about what an infestation is. It's a targeted attack. It's an intelligent, evil force that wants to break its victims down psychologically, playing on their fears, their loneliness, before it moves in for the final prize: possession. Lorraine Warren, with her clairvoyant abilities, she knew almost right away what was going on. She looked at the terrified family and just said it, plain and simple. This spirit didn't arrive on its own. It was invited in. And in that moment, with everyone looking at her, a terrified Patty finally broke down and told them everything about the Ouija board. Okay, so now they know what it is, and they know how it got in. The Warrens knew there was only one way to handle this. And that brings us to the final, terrifying climax in Section 4, confrontation with the demon. An exorcism was the only way. And the second the priest began the ritual, the entire house just exploded into what I can only describe as a spiritual war zone. I mean, you can see the progression right here. The ritual starts, and immediately the entity shows up. The room goes freezing cold. Then, that black shadow lunges, and it goes right into Patty. She starts to levitate, her eyes turn blood red. What happened next was just a brutal, violent fight between good and evil, and it ended when the entity was finally, forcefully kicked out. And if you need any proof of the raw power that was unleashed in that room, just look at this number: 5 feet. That's how far Patty's body was thrown across the room, violently thrown, slamming against a wall. At the exact second, the entity was expelled from her. This wasn't just a spiritual battle, it was a physical one too. After that unbelievable storm of the exorcism, this eerie quiet finally settled over the house. Which brings us to our last section, and to the story's big takeaway: one final lesson. In the end, the silence was almost deafening. The knocking, the smells, the blood in the water, it was just gone. The infestation was over. Patty was finally safe. The Donovans got their house back, and they could finally start to heal. The Donovan family's story is just such a chilling cautionary tale, isn't it? It's a story about loneliness, about being vulnerable, and about the very real danger of playing with things we don't understand. And it really just leaves us all with one final haunting question to think about: should some doors always remain closed?